Welcome to Stories Sustain Us, the podcast where we explore the inspiring stories of individuals dedicated to making a positive impact on our world. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and today we have a truly remarkable guest with us. She's a great friend of mine, and for all the Texans out there, she's working hard for you every day. My guest today is Suzanne Scott, the State Director of the Nature Conservancy in Texas. Suzanne's journey began in San Antonio, where her deep connection to community and early leadership experiences set the stage for an extraordinary career. Her work with the San Antonio River Authority has been transformative, helping to turn long-neglected parts of the San Antonio River into a thriving natural, recreational, and economic resource for the city, county, and region. In her role with the Nature Conservancy, Suzanne is leading efforts to protect over 1 million acres of land, conserve vital water resources, and restore critical ecosystems all across Texas. Her work exemplifies the balance between the needs of people and nature, ensuring a sustainable future for both. We'll also discuss in this episode the ambitious 2030 goals set by the Nature Conservancy and how collaboration, kindness, and compassion are central to Suzanne's vision for a better future. Let me tell you a little bit more about Suzanne Scott before we get into this episode. Suzanne joined the Nature Conservancy in Texas as the state director in November 2020, after a 20-year career with the San Antonio River Authority, serving as its general manager for 13 years. If you're not familiar with the state of Texas, let me tell you, it has wide open spaces, thriving cities, a strong farming and ranching culture, and a rapidly growing population. As state director for the Nature Conservancy in Texas, Suzanne establishes conservation strategy and public policy leadership to protect the state's cherished landscapes and support ecology, economy, public health, and equity. Collaborating closely with the talented staff of dedicated conservationists, scientists, and multidisciplinary experts, she is focused on promoting resilience through on-the-ground nature-based projects in rural and urban communities and along coasts, while supporting the protection and restoration of connected and diverse habitats and ecosystems throughout Texas. Suzanne obtained her undergraduate degree from Texas Tech University and a Master of Science in Urban Administration from Trinity University. She is based at TNC Texas headquarters office in San Antonio. Like Sean Donovan, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, Suzanne is a friend and former work colleague. In fact, she was my direct boss and mentor for nearly 14 of the 15 years I spent working at the San Antonio River Authority. Working directly for Suzanne and the residents of the San Antonio River Basin was an amazing experience for me, and I'm grateful to have Suzanne join us for today. I have a little bit of housekeeping to share before jumping into the interview with Suzanne, so let me tell you a little bit about that. Today's conversation is a bit longer than any of my past interviews. Suzanne and I dive deep into her work at both the San Antonio River Authority and the Nature Conservancy in Texas. I think it's a great conversation about some really important sustainability topics. I thought about turning this episode into a two-parter, but I decided to leave it as one long show. However, since it is a bit long, I've decided to leave this episode up for 2 weeks to give everyone time to enjoy it before releasing a new interview. So, with that housekeeping out of the way, get ready for an insightful conversation with Suzanne Scott, filled with inspiration, practical wisdom, and a powerful reminder of the difference each of us can make here on Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. All right. Well, Suzanne, welcome. Welcome to Stories Sustain Us. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, good to see you. I know I just did the introduction and let everybody know that I've known you for quite some time. So thank you for taking time to join me. It's nice to see you and always good to catch up with you. So thanks for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure. And congratulations on this great podcast. It's really been very interesting learning about all the great folks that you come in contact with. And I've always been amazed by how you can just create really great relationships with so many people. And that's really wonderful.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, meeting a lot of really interesting folks from around the world, and
Yeah,
I'm having a blast with it. So thank you for that compliment.
of course.
Appreciate it. So you know the format, you know then what we're doing. We're going to jump in and hear a little bit about your story, and then we will eventually, when we get there, we'll talk about your work as the state director of the Nature Conservancy in Texas, which I'm super excited to hear about. So let's jump into your story first. What's your story, Suzanne? Tell me a little bit about your life. Some of this I know because we've worked together for so long, but the
Yes,
audience doesn't. So tell us
yes.
your story.
Well, in thinking about my story, I think I have to first start about the fact that, I've been in San Antonio. I grew up here. I really love this city. And I think that it really has defined me being in San Antonio and really thinking about community. And as I was getting ready for this podcast, I was really thinking about, what part of my story it has kind of defined my career.
Yeah.
And I really think that, I grew up on the south side of San Antonio, which those of you that don't know about San Antonio is kind of a sort of was in the past a kind of an under resourced part of town.
Yeah.
And my mom was a single mom, and I have two brothers who are older and myself. And my mom um, grew up in San Antonio and on the south side as well. And then, got married to my dad. They moved. And then unfortunately that didn't work out. And they came back to San Antonio because my mom's mom, my grandmother, was here
Yeah.
and her support system was here, all on the south side of San Antonio. So that's kind of where I sort of had my roots and really began to, make my friends and my family on the south side of San Antonio. And of course, the river, the San Antonio River, is a very important part of the south side of San Antonio. And although I didn't know that my career would take me there, I passed over that river so many different times. And my grandmother lived right down the street from Mission Concepcion, which is a mission, one of the Spanish colonial missions that
Yeah.
became part of the World Heritage
I think it's my
designation.
favorite.
Yes, it's a beautiful
It's a
mission, and
beautiful mission. Yeah.
yeah, and it's such a it's literally in a neighborhood. So most people that come to this World Heritage site thinks, oh, these places are going to be sort of defined by some amazing area around it or something. And this is just, you drive up and it's in a neighborhood. And I would go to this mission all the time. And again, between the river and the mission, I just enjoyed it as living on that part of the city. I didn't really realize that my career would take me down that path.
Yeah.
But, I enjoyed growing up there and really enjoyed just kind of the river environment and all the wonderful natural elements that the river had. And then, of course, it had been channelized, so it wasn't
Yeah, I was going
great.
to ask. It had
Yeah.
already been kind of
Yes.
straightened by the Corps and by the city and county and by the River Authority.
Yeah, we didn't know anything different then, right? That
Right.
was the river. We didn't
Right.
know.
So your memory of childhood memories of the river was the kind of the trapezoidal storm
Yeah,
water drainage ditch. That was the river for you.
that's what we knew.
Yeah.
And it was, my brothers used to go and explore all the time. And of course, my mom didn't want me going down there because that wasn't safe. But so anyway, I mean, I really enjoyed growing up there. I went to San Antonio Independent School District is the school district that I was raised in.
Yeah.
So I went to elementary school and middle school and high school, all in the San Antonio Independent School District. Again, a very inner city type school district. And it was, the school district that I went to, we would really, I did the dance team thing. It was my engagement with sort of extracurricular activities. So I danced a lot when I was younger. My mom got me in dance. And really, I started that because I had some weak legs when I was younger. And my mom just thought dance would kind of get me, better, would strengthen my legs. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I was glad I did because, dance is a very engaging, you work with a lot of other people and, you sort of have to work the routines out and all that. So through dance, I became very involved with the dance team in high school. And that was really my first opportunity to kind of have a leadership role and try to start to deal with trying to get people to go in the direction that you would like them to go. And how do you use leadership skills to figure out?
Organize people to go a same direction for the same purpose. Yeah.
Like high schoolers, especially dance team girls that don't care about other girls telling them what to do. So, but that was sort of my first introduction to kind of leadership. And what does that mean to really bring people along and really trying to make people understand that we're all better if we do it together. And if we all think about how to solve this problem, in this case, at that time, dance team. But I really didn't realize then that those very foundational times of bringing people together and trying to figure out how to lead them was something that I would really enjoy, working with people and trying to get, have people have their best selves brought forward. And what could I do to make sure that you develop someone in a way that empowers them and they feel good about what they're doing and that we all feel good as a team. So that kind of started then, and I was on the French club and then did other, student government kind of things. So I sort of, between the dance and the student government thing, I really felt like that was kind of going to be my path, is really trying to figure out how to inspire and work with teams of people to have a common result. And that really took me into when I went off to college. I went to Texas Tech in Lubbock. And
which, for those who don't know the size of the state of Texas, that's like 5 hours away from San Antonio, but still in Texas.
That was right. I mean, at the time, I wanted to go as far away from San Antonio as I could without paying out-of-state tuition. And that's Texas Tech in Lubbock in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
So, and that was great because I did go away pretty far, which was a great experience for me to kind of get away from being at home and sort of the responsibilities I felt, with, as I mentioned earlier, my mom being a single mom and, just the pressures of that and always wanting to make sure that I wasn't a problem to her because she had too many other things to worry about.
Sure.
But going away to college, I think was a really great experience. And I studied advertising public relations then, which is sort of communications degree.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I did, a lot of different leadership roles. I was in a sorority and, of course, immediately took on some leadership roles there. And I was in other organizations in college, but really because I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with people and solving problems and having, again, shared outcomes of what we were all trying to work on.
Yeah.
So, then as I finished my career, I really didn't think I wanted to come back to San Antonio, but I did. I came back to San Antonio and I got a job working at what was then the Southwest Craft Center, which was
this is early 90s-ish?
I graduated from college in 85.
85. Okay. Didn't know if it was late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Didn't want to.
Yeah. I'm
guessing
old.
for the younger age, just trying to be.
Yes, I graduated from Tech in 85 and came back to San Antonio and got a job at a small nonprofit. It was an art school, Southwest School of Art.
They're on the Riverwalk.
Now, Southwest Craft Center then.
Yeah.
And it was a place where, local artists would come together and teach classes to people.
That's a great little place, yeah.
It was in an old convent, Ursuline Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beautiful historic building on the Riverwalk. Again, my first job on the river. I mean, there's a connection here.
There's a theme running through your life here.
Theme. The river runs through it, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I got this job, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn about, writing press releases and being a communicator and talking with the media about, what we were doing there at the school. And then I got the opportunity to get another job downtown San Antonio. I worked for Via Metropolitan Transit, which is the transit company.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing a big downtown improvement project called Tri-Party, which was a project that brought together the downtown owners, so the merchants associations downtown, the the transit company and the city of San Antonio to kind of come up with a real big improvement project for downtown, transit oriented, but it was mainly just uh, making sure that the river was a better place.
Right.
And not the river, I mean downtown.
Yeah.
Not so much the river.
Is it helpful here maybe for folks who aren't completely familiar with San Antonio? Mm-hmm. So the San Antonio River, because we're going to talk a lot about that. I imagine we already are. Its headwaters is north of downtown, a few miles north of downtown, flows through downtown, and then goes another 240 miles or so to the coast.
Right.
And the Riverwalk, the core of downtown, that the Horseshoe Bend, the area. If you've seen pictures of restaurants and hotels and colorful umbrellas and mariachi bands and things like that, of San Antonio, that's the very core part of downtown San Antonio. The river, I suspect, in this time frame, late 80s, early 90s, north of that core business area, Riverwalk, and certainly south into your old neighborhood, the river was a forgotten thing during those times. So
absolutely.
So I think it's important to tie that little bit of information into your tri-parties of, when people talk about, you're talking about kind of improving downtown on the river. If people are like, well, you already had the Riverwalk, what is there to improve? There was a lot to improve with the river in the downtown area, other than that really core central Riverwalk area. Am I telling that story accurately?
Absolutely. I mean, the river then, it was definitely focused on that main sort of tourist attraction downtown, which is the Riverwalk, the Horseshoe that you talk about, where most of the river restaurants are located. The the river itself, sort of north of downtown, really was, like you said, it was just sort of overgrown and not really anything for people to enjoy, nor was it the south. Although the missions were there, as I mentioned earlier, there was not really very much of a connection.
There was complete disconnection,
disconnection. There was no trails at the time. There was really not much at all. Right. It was just focusing mainly on that downtown part that had been developed, really, as you know, through Hemisphere, and then, over the years became kind of that tourist attraction and a lot of the convention business that kind of grew up around it. So all that downtown. Right. So when we were doing the Tri-Party project, which was, I guess, at this point, 90s, early 90s, most people, the downtown was really had not had a whole lot of investment, to be quite honest, at that time. Yeah. And there were a lot of vacant storefronts, and people were it was, not a very safe place to be quite honest. I mean, people would sort of be on the Riverwalk, and that was kind of okay. But when you started walking around downtown, it really wasn't any place that people wanted to be. So the city was trying to use any way they could to try to invest in downtown. And this was one way to do it, is through the federal government was putting a lot of money into transit at the time. And they really wanted people to kind of use transit money to kind of stimulate economic development, which was kind of what this project was. So, it was a huge downtown construction project. Yeah. And had to work with a lot of different property owners and trying to connect the value of this project, considering the fact that it was going to close down streets for a long time, and people were going to they were already economically stressed, and now we were going to put even more stress on them. Right. But it was my first experience doing a big public improvement project, and really trying to understand how to connect the dots between the project itself and the goals and objectives that you're trying to achieve, but also working with the communities that are affected, in this case, downtown property owners and business owners, and how to, pull together both the funding sources for the project, as well as the communications aspects, as well as trying to get people to buy in on the outcome of the project that you were doing. The vision, exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of my first, my first effort there when I worked at VIA and did this big Tri-Party project. And then the change in my life at the time, I was, and I'll share this with your your listeners is they can appreciate the challenge. I was working at VIA, and it was going, I did the Tri-Party Project, and then I got promoted and did other great work at VIA, just moving through there, mainly I moved more into the intergovernmental relations, community relations, communications aspect of that job. And unfortunately got into a situation with who was the board chair at the time. It was a sexual harassment situation with the board chair at the time, which was a difficult thing as a woman professional at that time of my career. And I had to really decide to leave at VIA at the time, and which was unfortunate because I really loved the job. But, I had to make a decision to separate myself from a very uncomfortable situation. And so I did.
Yeah.
So at that time,
thank you for sharing that. I knew that piece of your history, and I wasn't going to ask about it because it's such a personal piece of your history. Thank you for the vulnerability and courage of sharing that, because I think that's an important thing to share. As you're, a woman leader who's accomplished so many incredible things during your career, and still, is accomplishing incredible things. To tell that hard part of your story, your truth. Thank you for doing that. I think it's important for people to hear that that's it's not that people don't know that's a real thing, but it's a real thing. It happens. It's a real thing. And for you to share about it and talk about it. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. And, it was a hard time. I mean, It wasn't like I'm now many years later, I can kind of say but it was a defining moment. I mean, I think it is a defining moment in my career and as a woman, and as a professional, because as I moved through my career, especially as people remembered that, because it was all over the news at the time. It was pretty, when I left, it wasn't, but the person who was, I was in this sexual harassment situation did the same thing to someone else who came into the position after I left. So it was kind of that second person that came after me made it more public. And so it kind of brought me back into it later in my career.
Yeah.
But I think that it's something that, everybody faces challenges in their careers. And I think it's how you come out of those challenges and how do you develop where you're going from there. And I think that's what I tried to do from it as I moved through my career. But at the time, it was very difficult, and I had to make a decision to leave. So I did leave, and I decided to go back to school at that time. I decided, I'm going to take a break a minute and just figure out what I'm going to do. So I went back and got my master's in public administration at the time, because I really felt like this trajectory of working in the public sector was really where I wanted to stay. And so that's what I did at that time. I went back to school and got my degree in
Trinity, right?
Yeah, Trinity at Trinity University, and then during that process, I got a internship at Bexar County, and this guy that I knew, my mom actually knew him. Marcus Johns was his name, and my mother asked if he would give me an opportunity to get an internship at the county, and he said yes. So I went and worked, there, got my internship to finish up my master's degree, and then ended up working at Bexar County, which was transformational. Of course.
I didn't know that part of your story. You got to thank your mom for getting your little toe in the door there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about relationships. Just like I said at the beginning, it's all about who you meet along the way.
Yeah. Our relationship wouldn't have happened, I imagine, without your mom helping you out there. So that's a neat little piece of your story I hadn't known. I didn't know before.
So anyway, I started at Bexar County, and then that's where I really got introduced to sort of the trajectory of my life with the River Authority. And, the county was going to be putting a lot of money. We had a big flood. I don't know if you have talked about the big flood, since that's what you're doing now, but we had a pretty big flood in San Antonio in 1990. 98.
Yeah.
I was thinking 98. My daughter was
October of 98, if I remember right.
October of 98.
Yeah.
And so that flood really started getting the county and the city and others really trying to focus on what the heck are we doing about flood infrastructure in San Antonio. So I started getting involved in that, bringing together stakeholder committees And then that, we did the big project with the River Authority at the time to look at what we were doing for flood infrastructure at the time in the response to that. And that at the same time, this river improvements project process was also starting. So
Kicking
we were
off,
doing
yeah.
the flood of 98 response, but then, right a couple of years before that, the county was already thinking about this investment in the river. So those two things sort of came together, investing in the river for the purposes of improvements to that infrastructure, as we were talking about earlier, expanding the river for really at that time more of an economic development purpose, not so much flood control. But these things kind of started blending a lot at the county.
Yeah, multi-purpose.
Because it's like you life and safety, which was the flood side, with economic development, and how could these two things come together? So
yeah.
The county, obviously started investing in the river improvements project. But, really it started as just working with the community and figuring out where to go with these improvements, and taking old project plans and kind of bringing them with a new focus and trying to, start that river improvements project then at the county. And then that just took me into the River Authority. And then, of course, there for 20 years, did great work at the River Authority with both the museum reach and the mission reach. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through my history. And then that just catapulted me into where I am today, just really around nature and water, and really trying to make sure that nature is not just a nice to have, it's a need to have. And that's been my focus for a very long time.
Well, let's touch just a little bit on some of the stuff at the River Authority.
Sure.
I had Sean Donovan on the show a couple weeks ago, and he talked about the mission reach a little bit, and we focused that conversation, as you can imagine, Sean, about the mussel and the mussel study and survivability and all the amazing work that's being done. It's not just survivability now; it's actually thriving. They're reproducing, and where it's amazing. So, but tell me, we didn't, in that interview with Sean, we didn't get too deep into the San Antonio River Improvements Project, and you were absolutely the catalyst for that. And I know you'll be humble, and you're going to give credit to 1,000 other people who deserve credit, including Judge Wolf and Mayor Hardberger and a bunch of other folks. But I was there with you for 15 of those years, and you were the glue that held that project together. You were the one behind the scenes that made it happen. The elected officials and so many other people are rightfully so deserve credit, because that's where the money came from and everything. And of course, they need the kudos and all the recognitions that come with that. But behind the scenes, getting the job done day in and day out, that project, I know, wouldn't have happened certainly the way that it did now, being a globally recognized project. It would not have happened without your leadership. So I would love to hear your thoughts a little bit about what you think about it. I mean, now that you're separated from it by a number of years, and what's your recollection of working on that project? Because it was amazing to see you work on it and learn from you and support you along the way. But how do you feel about it now that you're not so in it anymore?
Well, I'm extremely proud of that project and all that was accomplished. And yes, it took a lot of people to get that project done. And I think that, I walk the river, frequently, just because it's, the Nature Conservancy's office was at the Pearl until we moved here last year. But when I started in this job, I was at the Pearl, which is on the museum reach, that northern
And we didn't tell, that was not part of the conversation a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to tell people what that is, that's new information. No one's heard anything about that yet. So what is the museum reach?
The River Improvements Project was sort of 3 phases. Well, it's more 4 phases if we want to consider Eagle Land. But the big projects were sort of downtown. We did at the beginning, we did some improvements to the downtown section, that section that we talked about earlier. That was that historic part of the river. There was lots of that falling apart. So the first part of the river improvements project was just to kind of shore up that downtown. And then there was the museum reach, which went north into the museum section, where there's several museum establishments on the northern part of the river. And then south is the mission reach, which, we were talking about where the mussels are, where Sean is. And we call it the mission reach because the Spanish colonial missions are located on the river there, and kind of why those Spanish colonial missions were established there back in the 1700s was because the river was there. The flora and fauna of the river kind of established and supported those Spanish colonial missions that were there in the 1700s.
Yeah.
But the museum reach is more of the kind of an extension of the river walk in more of a formal setting and more of a designed Riverwalk extension that kind of has different, as you're walking up it, there's sort of different themes, but much more manicured and kind of similar to what you would see downtown. But it's more of a live, work, play environment. Downtown, very much of a restaurant district, more of the play, not the live, although a little bit more of that now, but historically more the play. Now, as you're moving up to the museum reach, there's a lot of residential development there. And the kind of anchor tenant on that was an old brewery, the Pearl Brewery, that the guy who owned Pace Picante sauce, if any of your listeners know about Pace Picante sauce, that was bought through Campbell's Soup Company, I guess, bought that Pace Picante back in the day. And Kit Goldsberry was part of the owner of Pace at the time, and made a lot of money through that sale, and took a lot of the money that he got from that and sort of reinvested it into this Pearl development. And it's called Pearl because of the Pearl Brewery that was there, and beautiful historic location. And that had really gone. I mean, was back in the day, it was just an awful place as far as, it just gone to disrepair. I mean, nothing was really happening, but beautiful buildings on this place. But he bought it, and it was right on the river, and became kind of that anchor tenant that really encouraged the city to do something. When he was going to come in and put a lot of investment there, they thought, okay, let's extend the river. And so, we looked at how to do that. But the project itself, ended up, having pedestrian and barge connections all the way up from the downtown Riverwalk all the way up to Pearl. And Pearl has become a destination in its own right. I mean, it is a lot of restaurants and entertainment and residential, and has a fabulous farmers market that people go to. It's very much of a gathering place for the city, and has stimulated all kinds of economic development. I mean, you were part of that. That project paid for itself
many times over.
After 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But they thought it was going to be closer to 10 years for the payback, and it happened much faster, even in after a recession and
the downturn.
The downturn. So anyway, that project has been very successful, but it was a great achievement, and I was very proud of that one. And it was funny because most people felt like once we did the museum reach, we were not going to do the part that went south. Because as I said, when I told my story, the southern part of San Antonio had long been under-resourced, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing, we just sent our floodwaters down south. We sent our sewage down south. We didn't really do much to the river at all down south. And it was trapezoidal channel. It had been channelized, take all the natural parts of the river out. Even though we had all of this wonderful history and all these great places with the missions, as I mentioned, and other beautiful historical parts of San Antonio, it was just sort of not invested in. And so once we did the museum reach, everyone thought, oh, great, they're going to stop.
They're done. Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah. And
because that was all, that part of the project was all locally funded. There was no federal dollars in that project. It was easier. It was kind of easier to button up, right? And you could do the economic return. You sort of saw it with the Riverwalk. It wasn't like a hard sell, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
as part of a sell. I mean,
Sure.
there
There was a vision
yeah,
available with the existing
yeah,
Riverwalk that you could say we're expanding
yeah, and
this
we've done that.
already successful thing. We're expanding that. Right.
Exactly. It was
Right.
more something that people kind of got and understood. The
Right.
southern part, not so much. I mean, we were
Right.
talking about an ecosystems restoration project of a river and how does that work? And
Yeah. Whole new
the
story to tell.
yeah, and the federal government was involved because it was originally a Corps of Engineer project and they still had to stay involved. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is so complex
Yeah.
and much harder. And that's where I think the River Authority kind of shined, in my opinion, is the fact that the River Authority could be the constant organization through changes of mayors and county judges and commissioners and other priorities that were in the city, that were going on all over the place. We were trying to hold together this very complex project that took a long time to put together. And so, I'm really proud of, I'm proud of the museum reach, don't get me wrong, but I think I'm more proud of the mission reach because it could have gone south, literally gone south many, many times. I mean, because it was so hard. I mean, it was anytime you're dealing with the federal government trying to bring money in, and then, the federal government was not putting money into ecosystem restoration projects. They were thinking flood control, navigation, much more important than ecosystem restoration.
Yeah.
They didn't want to come in and fix their rivers that they had screwed up. I mean, they just wanted to move on to the next thing. Why go back?
It works for flooding, so why do we need a natural native environment that is thriving? It
Yes.
Yeah, it's very utilitarian.
Yes. So I mean, but we, I think, just kind of plotted through saying, no, we've got to figure this out.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of twists and turns with the federal government. We ended up taking over for the federal government and saying, let us move this project forward. And we got money through every way that we could because the federal government, many of your listeners may remember when there were things called earmarks where you could go in as a congressional member and say, I want this project and I want money, and put it in appropriations, and that'd be done with it. And that was kind of the old way, the good old boy way of doing projects. Well, that changed right when we were trying to do the mission reach. And, we had to get it in. We had to try to get this project in the budget, which we could never get it in the budget because it was never really a priority by the Corps of Engineers. So we had, twists and turns. We had great champions. I mean, at the time when we first started, Kay Bailey Hutchinson was our congresswoman and our senator.
Yeah.
And she, helped us at the beginning of the project to try to get this thing going. She was awesome. And, but, we had many people since then. But anyway, we kind of got it going. And I think that is really what started. And then we used every trick in the book to try to get that project moving. And we did. I mean, we took over for the Corps of Engineers. We changed all of our agreements. We took the risk of moving that project forward before we knew we had the money. But finally, I think just through our sort of tenacity and persistence, as well as with, people like Nelson Wolff, as you mentioned, the projects sort of had the right time, people coming together at the right time to make a huge project happen.
Yeah.
And thank God we did, truly, because now, I mean, that is, as Sean is telling you, the ecosystem is better and it has healed itself. I mean, the birds have come back, the mussels, all the natural environment, the ecosystem has really thrived. And I was just driving down there the other day, and just the trees that we planted, these little bitty trees are now,
sticks,
really, they're growing. So I think the lesson is that, hard projects take time and they take people to be committed to making sure that they happen. And I was, I'm very proud that we were able to get that done, because look what's happened since. I mean, we got the World Heritage designation. We've gotten, the ecosystem is strong and healthy. The people love that project. It's constantly being voted one of the best projects, best trail projects, best place for people to take their families, on and on and on. People love it. And even though it's not that manicured river walk that people were accustomed of knowing about the river.
Yeah.
Now people are seeing the river, more of a natural river in an urban setting. And because of your great work, it was recognized by for the International River Prize, and has now seen something that is world renowned. People come and want to see it, and you've done yourself many lectures all over the world about how that project came to be. And I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we all were able to make together.
Yeah.
And giving it back to the community. I think that's the theme here, is something that you work so hard on, but it improves your community, and it improves, with my connections to the South Side, I think I had that passion for it anyway, but I wanted to give something back to the community that I think, and I believe that they would love, and they have.
Yeah. It occurred to me today, when you were sharing your story. I mean, I knew you grew up on the South Side there around Mission Concepcion and everything. We had, I don't know how many times we've talked about that in our years of knowing each other. It didn't occur to me until just today, though, how special it must have been for you when we did the phase 1 grand opening there at Concepcion Park. And I was so focused on just putting that event on and trying to make sure the event happened. It didn't occur to me that day or since, like, wow, this is beyond your professional accomplishment that day to be proud of that day, that your family tie, your childhood tie to that very area where we had this big celebration. And it just occurred to me that must have been a uniquely special day for you beyond professional pride. So
absolutely, I remember that day. It was very emotional. Just the fact that the river was going to be something that those families could now come down and actually enjoy, and not be afraid of being down there and being in a safe environment, knowing that over time that project was going to really be a destination that people would enjoy so much. And it was really very special to me, because it is someplace now that families of all walks of, they come from all over the
everywhere.
city.
Yeah.
Again, that as I said before, people didn't go to the South Side. They just didn't go. They didn't understand and appreciate. And, you really can't, if you won't take care of something unless you appreciate it. And how many times have we said that, getting people access to the river, and people, any place, and whether it's San Antonio or any place, if you want someone to really appreciate a place, you have to have access to it. People have to understand and want to have that same amount of connectivity and passion for it. So now bringing people from more the resourced sides of San Antonio down to a place that was really not a destination that anyone would think of. Now, people all over, and visitors are especially coming to go to the Mission Reach of the San Antonio River, because you can paddle it now. Now, in addition, we haven't even talked about that. The fact that now, people can paddle the river, that they didn't get to do that before, and they can ride their bikes, and they can bring their families, and they can picnic, and they can fish, and they can really have an interaction with the river, which I think is so awesome.
Yeah. Well, that was a great day, and I'm glad for you. Like I said, I apologize for not thinking about how this personally important it was to you, because I was so focused on just the job at hand that day, is making sure it all went well.
Well, I think that's, that's what we all do. I often people will say, don't you remember all the difficult times of these projects? And I'm saying, no, I don't remember any of the bad times. I only remember the good
celebrations.
Times. Put those parts behind us. Yes, it was challenging, but it's move on.
Yeah. And that was the day it was Secretary Ken Salazar announced his, the federal support for going after the World Heritage designation was at that event. So again, tying the success of the river, and we weren't even done yet. We only had the first mile of that 9-mile project done, and he was already so impressed with what we were doing with the restoration and the recreational connections, and he could see the future as well as what it, as well as you did, and others could, because of your great storytelling abilities, and So that announcement that day was also part of what changed the South Side, its future trajectory with that with the International World Heritage
Mm-hmm.
recognition from the UN. So
Yeah.
all that ties in to that one day, and
Yes.
I'm really happy for you. I'm
Well, thank you.
a new level of happiness for you, because I was already
Oh,
thrilled
yeah.
that day to be part of it, but just
Yeah.
to have that connection made in my brain of that was important to you. I'm gonna cry
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I care a lot about you.
Oh, you're so
So
sweet. Well,
yeah,
it was an amazing day, and I remember even sitting there when we did get the World Heritage designation when we were in Bonn, Germany, when we got that
yeah,
designation. How all that had come
just
together over
tied
so
together.
much
Yeah,
time. I mean, it's just you really do get just emotional about it because you think of all the hard work that everybody put in,
yeah,
but the benefit to the community. I mean, that is just so
enormous.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and will be for decades to come.
Oh yeah,
So yeah.
sure.
All right, so let's transition. Get me out of tears and transition into new stuff that I haven't talked to you about, because
Yes.
so your work at the Nature Conservancy in
Hmm.
Texas
Hmm.
also incredibly important for communities, not just in San Antonio now, but you're doing stuff to make the entire state a more livable place.
Hmm.
Tying together the importance of nature
Hmm.
to economics and to livability and future climate change issues, which I do want to chat with you about, because I know that's a interesting subject in
Hmm.
Texas to talk about. So
Yeah, it
so
is.
so what are you doing these days? What is life like for you as the state director for the Nature Conservancy in Texas?
Busy. The Nature Conservancy, when I came here from the River Authority, the River Authority was, 200 employees, and, a great um, organization, of course, and had a great team. But it was 4 counties, Bear, Wilson, Carnes, and Goliad, kind of a regional entity. The Nature Conservancy, I didn't realize, I mean, I knew it was a big organization, but didn't realize quite until I got here how huge it is.
Yeah,
But, the River Authority is the largest global environmental,
the Nature
excuse me, the
Conservancy.
Nature
Yeah,
Conservancy is the largest global environmental organization. It is in like 77 countries, every state in the United States, just all over the world, and a big, big organization. And, doing amazing things all over the place. I mean, you constantly can look and see wonderful projects and big ecosystems that are being protected all over the world by the Nature Conservancy. Credible people doing amazing work, and working directly with indigenous communities in countries all over the world and protecting important ecosystems, and which is great. And I'm really proud to be part of an organization that's having such an incredible impact on the world. And here in Texas, I wanted to, when I decided to leave the River Authority to come to the Nature Conservancy, I really just wanted to sort of uh, understand and learn more about the conservation efforts throughout the state,
yeah,
and really try to figure out if what we had done here in San Antonio could sort of be, growing it into other communities, and how to protect these ecosystems. So I didn't even know what I was getting into when I came here. But the one thing that I really learned very, very fast, two things. One is, in San Antonio, and I know you and I have had conversations about this quite a bit, and it's probably different from where you are now, but remember, we used to think, gosh, where are all the environmental groups in San Antonio?
yeah.
It was like us on our own, and we were a government, right, at the River Authority. We weren't even a nonprofit. I
Right.
mean, there were a couple of nonprofits, but nowhere near what you
The,
would think we
there
would
was not a
have in
big
the city of
voice.
San Antonio. No, it
Right.
wasn't. And when I came here, oh my goodness, the number of nonprofits throughout the state of Texas working in these other cities, Dallas and Houston and Austin and other just larger environmentally based NGOs. I mean, I just didn't, just incredible amount, and which I was so impressed by. It's like, we don't have those in San Antonio, and I'm sure up where you are, that's just a vast number of nonprofits who have been working in this space for a very long time. But it was new to me. I just didn't realize, and so many partners doing incredible work. I mean, we're a land trust. The Nature Conservancy in Texas is a land trust. I don't even know really what that was, other than Green Spaces Alliance was the one I knew about in because I was on that board for a while in San Antonio. But again, there's tons of them all over, and important, doing great work for land conservation throughout the state. So, I mean, that was the first thing that I really learned is, wow, I'm so glad there were more people working on this than when we were in San Antonio struggling to get people to come to Citizens to be Heard. I mean, it was just hard.
It was.
Can't y'all help us support this?
Yeah. We need some cover. We need some people to show they care about these environmental, sustainable issues we're trying to push.
We still don't have very many in San Antonio, unfortunately, but we can talk about that maybe if we have time. But so anyway, that was one thing. And then, of course, raising money. I didn't know anything about how to run a nonprofit. I mean, back in the day when we worked with government, we knew at the very beginning of the year how much actual money we had to do work with.
And in collecting taxes.
Yeah, exactly. When you have tax dollars, you sort of know how much you have. Well, in the nonprofit world, you said a budget is a plan. It's a plan. And then you have to go out and raise the money in order to do the actual work that you want to do. And fortunately, the Nature Conservancy, because of its global reach, has a lot of folks that support the work of this organization. And the Nature Conservancy in Texas has been here. We're celebrating our 60th year this year in 2024. So, so there is already a network of supporters, and which was fortunate. And I kind of learned about that, but still continuing to do the great work that people want to participate in. I also, when I got here, realized that this organization did not really have a strategic plan, had not done much recently about kind of, okay, what are we trying to achieve? What are our outcomes?
What are you aiming at? Yeah.
So we started that here, strategic plan. I mean, the big organization had some goals and objectives, but we really hadn't tied ourselves up to that very well. So when I came to the Nature Conservancy, they had just gotten a new CEO, Jen Morris. She's the CEO of the big TNC.
Yeah.
And so she was coming in. She came in from Conservation International. So she had already had been working internationally. But when she got here, she realized we had to have better tracking mechanisms for goals and objectives. So at the same time we were trying to do work in Texas, she was also working at the larger organization. So since then, the Nature Conservancy came out with what we call our 2030 goals, and it's setting pretty aggressive goals in areas of land, water, coast, and climate. So now we have these big goals, and people can come to the TNC website and sort of learn more about the specific targets. But for the sake of this, it's allowed land protection and land improvement, water protection, water improvement, coastal protection, coastal improvement, fisheries, all of that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, climate mitigation and adaptation, so both trying to reduce carbon emissions, but also adapting to the changes of climate change that we're all seeing.
Right.
So there's goals and objectives in all of those spaces, just audacious goals. And there's a lot of, even within the Nature Conservancy, people that felt like these goals were just unattainable.
Too big.
Too big. And, the future will tell.
Aim high. Yeah.
Aim high, right?
Right.
And so then we started connecting the dots between what we were doing in Texas up to these 2030 goals. So that's sort of been our focus over the last few years, is really making sure that all the work that we do, we can track our results to these outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So really in the work that we're doing, this organization has been focused a lot on land protection. We have just celebrated this year our millionth acre milestone. We have protected 1 million acres in Texas. And for a state that has a lot of public land already, some folks may say, 1 million acres, really? You're celebrating 1 million acres? But in Texas, that is hard because
it's a huge deal.
Yes. Over 95% of the state is privately owned. And when you're talking about land protection in the state of Texas, you're talking about working with individual landowners and trying to figure out and encouraging them to protect their land. And that is something that this Nature Conservancy chapter has done just incredibly well over time. And we've done it in several ways. We do conservation easements on people's property. So you go to a private property owner and you say, hey, what do you want this property to become? And many of them have a conservation ethic. They want to protect the land because they see the wildlife, the water, the value of the land and the landscape. So many landowners,
generational ownership for a lot of those ranchers and farmers as well.
Exactly. And they want to protect that. And then we've done a lot of work with Texas Parks and Wildlife, where we've acquired land from private landowners and then passed it on to Texas Parks and Wildlife to make parks out of it. So like Enchanted Rock, I know you love that place.
Beautiful.
Enchanted Rock and Powderhorn and South Padre and Big Bend State Park. These great iconic places throughout the state. We've been involved in one way or another. Honey Creek is another one that's close to San Antonio, the Brackenback Cave where the bats are.
Amazing place. Yeah.
Just great places. So through that process, we have about 37 preserves in Texas, but also all this other land that we've done with Texas Parks and Wildlife. We've also done with private landowners. But now, today, Texas is growing so fast, and the fragmentation that's happening on the landscape is serious. And we're working with Working Lands right now to try to encourage the agricultural community to put even more conservation easements on their property. And they are, and fortunately, as we're going into this sort of next generation of wealth, and there's a lot of land transfer going on right now from the older owners of these properties to the next generation.
Yeah.
And the next generation is not going into agriculture. They are moving to cities or doing something else. Agriculture, it's a hard business, right? You don't make a whole lot of money running cattle on a piece of property. And so that fragmentation and that ownership issue, that shift of ownership, is a serious threat to land conservation in the state of Texas. So we're working a lot in that space, trying to ensure that the land that is already working lands stays working, and that we also work with, try to restore grasslands, habitat on these lands, not only protect them, but also restore them and improve them. Again, for the main reason of habitat protection, but also water. As you know, in Texas, water is such a big issue, and the land water protection, the aquifers that we have here, the river systems, trying to protect the river systems, the surface water, as well as the groundwater. We're very involved in that kind of activity here. So very important land protection and water protection work that we're doing here. We're doing great work in the areas of environmental water transactions. You may remember when we were working together at the River Authority, we did this Bay and Basin Area Stakeholder Committee where we tried to set targets of how much water needed to be in the river. And I'm sure Sean probably spoke about that a little bit when he was talking about the flows in the river, trying to maintain enough flows for those mussels to survive.
Yeah, everything, aquatic species to survive. Yeah, we didn't really get into that so much with Sean, but that's a great tie-in with what you're doing at the Nature Conservancy to make sure there's water in the rivers, because that's a real threat.
It is a big threat. And, in San Antonio, the San Antonio River is a spring-fed river. And when we drink the water out of the aquifer, the springs go dry, and then there's not as much natural flow going into the river. So here in San Antonio, we augment that with reuse water. Yeah. But throughout the state,
for folks who don't know, reuse water is recycled wastewater.
Yes.
So and when you flush a toilet or take your shower or whatever, that water is cleaned up to a very high level and then put back in the river. And in many instances, the San Antonio River frankly wouldn't exist without that recycled water. So
yes, that's right.
It's the
we didn't
future.
Have
people around the world are going to have to do that. It's the future.
It's the future. We wouldn't have a river walk that everyone loves to enjoy without that.
Right.
Here in San Antonio. And because the decision at the time was the highest and best use of that aquifer water is to sustain people, right? So drinking water.
So we had to find that balance, right?
Yeah, we had to make choices, and the same choices are now today between people and nature. And oftentimes people always seem to take. The life of people tends to take more precedence over the life of nature. So in this Bay and Basin area stakeholder process that we did back in the day, we came up with flow regimes. Like, what do you need to make sure that you can sustain rivers throughout, different seasonal variations, because the habitat needs that, not only in the river, but also in the bays and estuaries. So we here at the Nature Conservancy are working with private landowners who have water rights on their rivers and trying to help work with them to have better conservation on their their fields and in their agricultural uses, so that then we can lease or acquire those water, the difference,
the leftovers,
from the waterway, and keep it in the river.
Yeah, that's great.
So to try to get that down, have that fresh water flow in the rivers and down to the bays. And, it's an owner by owner, working on the back of the pickup with the plans. And really, I mean, that is the kind of work that we have to do with these landowners, because they have to trust you. They have to know that, Texas, again, our landowners have really amazing conservation ethic. And I think that a lot of times when people think about Texans, they probably think, a bunch of oil wells in their backyard or whatever. I mean, the perception is, yes, there's a lot of wealth, but there's a lot of conservation ethic of a lot of these landowners, and they want to do the right thing. And it's just finding that nexus, to try to figure out how to, either through a conservation easement on their property or through a water protection, we're just trying to work with them as much as possible.
Yeah.
But it's important work. And then in the cities, we're really doing a lot of nature-based solutions, trying to use nature as infrastructure. And that's been sort of my pet project since I was at the River Authority, what we called then low impact development, but now it's sort of nature-based solutions, trying to incorporate nature as we develop as a community and all the stacked benefits that come from that.
Can you give an example of what that is? I know what that is because I've worked with you for so long, but there might be people listening or watching that like, what's a nature-based solution? What's low impact development? What's like an example that someone could easily understand what you're referencing?
So let's think about that Walmart parking lot that maybe most people would be familiar with, big box store. The traditional way of building those big box stores is that you have a big parking lot, a lot of asphalt that is out in front, and all that impervious cover, which when it rains, of course, instead of that water being able to percolate, if it kind of pre-development, now it's all concrete or asphalt, and it just runs off, brings all those pollutants from that parking lot and goes into a drainage outfall into a creek, ultimately into the river. So by incorporating nature, you may either have a bioswale, like a place where you would add a natural feature in that parking lot where the water would run to that natural feature, which would be vegetated with natural plants and good soils, where it would absorb those pollutants and that water, kind of slow it down, soak it in, spread it out, so that by the time the water ends up getting to the creek or the river, it's been filtered out of pollutions. It's slowed down in its velocity. It's not bringing all of that intensity with it that it would off the impervious cover. And it also now has, it's cleaner.
Yeah.
And so by the time it gets to the creek or river, it's better, purer water. It's not great, but at least it's better than it would have been. So nature is functioning. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to do is nature isn't just a beautiful amenity. It is actually a functioning part of our cities, not only for the water improvement that I mentioned to you, but also heat island. Of course, areas where in August right now, it's extremely hot in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And
one of the reasons we moved away.
That's right. Lucky you. It's 106 degrees. And, and when you want to, walk down a street and there's no trees, I mean, you can't survive. You can't even walk from a bus stop. I mean, it's just really intense.
Right.
So really trying to get communities to think about nature-based solutions and trying to incorporate trees and vegetation and grasslands from a functional perspective.
Yeah.
It's also good for air quality. I mean, these are things that most people
aesthetics, it makes the area look nice.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
yes,
all kinds of quality of life
right.
attached to it, economic benefits
Mental
attached to
health.
it.
I mean, all the other things that come with nature.
Yeah.
And for a long, long time, people just built with nature in parks. Okay, we checked the box for nature. It's in a nice little park
Go over
here.
there. Yeah.
Yes. And you can't. So now we're just really working to try to encourage more development. So we've done a lot of studies in the Dallas area that can show that if they were to incorporate more nature-based flood control and stormwater projects, they could reduce the amount of flooding in the Dallas area. They could improve their water quality. They could reduce heat island effect. So we're just everywhere we can. We've done it here. We just got something passed in Austin with a new policy, a new resolution that they're encouraging all of their consultants to incorporate nature-based solutions in the designs that they're doing for infrastructure. Trying to do some of that here in San Antonio. But again, just shifting the way that we're developing in the state to at least consider the role that nature can play as we're developing in Texas. I mean, we're growing at a very fast pace, and we need to think about things differently than we have in the past.
And for audience members and listeners, Texas is like some places, particularly in the South, where water, rain kind of drains directly to a creek and river. There's other places around the country, around the world, where that stormwater runoff goes into a captured system and goes to a treatment facility. That's kind of the way it is here. But still using nature-based solutions in those systems is still beneficial as well. That's less, rainwater and waste and everything going into your wastewater system to be treated later, or those have overflows because the systems can't handle the human waste that's going through the pipes as well as the influx of rain, and so then you have overflows that are damaging and all kinds of mess. So these nature-based solutions can really work in any type of infrastructure system or any type of an environmental system. There's as you said, ways to incorporate nature into our infrastructure, so we're getting all these multiple benefits from nature. Nature isn't just an afterthought, or like you said, go over there to see it in this one little park. It can be incorporated in everything that we do in our urban lives, which has all these benefits, which is great. So
and I just think it's a shift in focus. And yes, these combined systems that you're talking about, nature-based solutions are still very important for that, particularly in managing the volume. I mean, if you're going to have have these natural systems and have a little bit of storage in them, and then release the water more slowly as it comes into the system, that always has benefits too. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I alluded to this earlier. I wanted to ask this question. How is it working in some of these cities in Texas? My recollection of Texas, there was a period of time where the words climate change were words you didn't want to use with certain elected officials because it just didn't resonate very well. So you had to find a different language to use, or a different way to talk about what most of us, I think, are recognizing as what's happening. That climate change is a thing. It's real. It's happening. Humans are involved in the reason for it being accelerated. My recollection was, Hurricane Harvey started to change that perception for people in Texas who may be right of the political center. What's your experience with, working around the state? It's a conservative state in many areas. The cities are often a little bit more left of center, but it's still a, politically speaking, it's still a red state. So part of the show is, the power of stories, and stories sustain us. You're getting things done. We were able to get things done at the River Authority. You're getting things done at the Nature Conservancy. So what language are you using? How are you talking to folks, or can you explain to the audience the importance of speaking to your audience where your audience is, rather than forcing your audience to join you where you are. Like
That's
you
right.
go meet them where they are in order
That's
to
right.
find that common ground and get things accomplished. And you're a master at that. I mean, you're so good at it. So can you talk a little bit about that importance of tailoring your message? You're still being truthful. You're still telling facts as facts, but it's the language that you use and how you tell that story to get someone to listen and want to cooperate with you as opposed to shut down and push you away. So
That's right.
you're so good at that. Tell us how you do that or why
Well,
it's
thank
important
you.
to do that.
It is, in Texas, it's hard to talk about climate change and because the fossil fuel industry is so important in Texas. I mean, it provides so much of the jobs that we have. It is, critical to the growth of the state and it's even more. I mean, more fossil fuel companies are moving to the state. And, which is interesting because we also have a pretty growing renewable energy
Yeah,
space.
the
But
biggest solar
yeah,
farms
and wind,
and
and yeah,
solar and wind is in Texas, right?
and but with some of the storms that we've had recently, the Uri, which was the storm that we had a couple of years ago, that was an ice storm that kind of took everybody by surprise, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we lost power. Parts of Texas lost power for a week or so.
yeah.
And then even in the summertime, there have been threats to, blackouts or brownouts and blackouts and reductions of power in this grid that we have. Texas, I don't know if your listeners understand, but we're a grid of our own. We do not connect to any other power system. So like in a lot of other states, if something happens in that state, they have relationships with
And
other,
draw, yeah.
providers.
Everywhere
Not here.
across the country except for
Yeah,
Texas,
just here.
people can
Texas is,
draw on power from other parts of the country if they need to, but Texas, yeah, doesn't do that.
we're an island. We have, and that's the way they want to keep it. They
Yeah,
don't want to be able to be connected, but the grid that we have here is very vulnerable to these kinds of shift in weather that on both extremes,
yeah,
too much cold and too much heat. So, so you have to balance the fact that the most of our leaders in Texas, they say, well, we just need to have more gas powered plants and really just pushing the fossil fuels, which I understand. I mean, I get it. But so what we really talk about is that sort of balance. We've got to be sure that we're balancing, and many of the companies, and it's surprising, not surprising probably to your listeners, but probably people that just don't want to talk about it, is many of the same companies that are the fossil fuel companies are also in the clean energy transition, because they know they have to be,
yeah.
because they're getting pressure from other states, other countries. I mean, these companies are not just isolated in Texas. They have a global reach,
Right.
and everywhere they go, they're being pushed to do cleaner energy.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, that's
happening
where their
here.
future markets are. So they
Yes,
evolving to continue to make money in a new market. Right.
exactly. So, I mean, so some of the same companies are are in that clean energy transition, and we know that, and I think the leaders know that. But we're just trying to navigate that situation. So what we talk a lot about is finding balance. How can we know we're not going to be able to get to a completely get off of fossil fuels for a very long time, because there's just too much of a dependency right now. And even though we're all sort of moving in that direction, you still are going to need fossil fuels to get to where you need to be. But can you have that balance? So that's what we talk a lot about, is trying to, balance from a policy perspective. How can we try to encourage the land, here in Texas, landowners can make their own decisions, right? I mean, if you want to put a solar farm on your property and you're going to get enough money from that, the landowner should have that right. Well, now what we're starting to see is one landowner may want to do solar. The next landowner next to them feels like they don't want to do that, and it's impeding their view. I mean, they moved to the hill country. Why do they want to look out now and see all this solar array on their neighbor, or these wind turbines? I mean, this conflict between adjacent landowners is becoming real.
Wow.
And now now sort of the regulatory environment around property rights and the development of solar and wind is starting to become a real issue. And we're going to see that in the legislature this next year. And we're going to see how they respond to that, because you don't want to take one of the sticks out of the bundle of sticks that a landowner has, right? I mean, if you're over the opportunity to develop oil on your property, it's because of where you're located. You've got that bundle. You've got that right. stick in your bundle because right. you have mineral rights. Well, your neighbor may not have that same mineral right. So why are you taking out their stick, which may be, I can run, do a lease for solar on my property and make money because I can't make money running cattle. I got to find something else.
Sure.
So it's this push and pull.
How that plays out.
So it's interesting to see what's going to happen on that. But a lot of what we're doing is, really just talking about climate vulnerability and what people are seeing and feeling. We do a polling in this state. Everyone, both sides of the aisle, the public agrees that things are changing. They are seeing more of an impact from climate, both from more severe droughts, more significant floods, hotter summers, colder winters. They're getting it. They see that things are changing. So I think what's happening, and this is how we talk about it, is no matter where you are on what the cause is, don't take necessarily a aggressive position against fossil fuels. That's not going to go anywhere. But if you can just recognize that something is happening, we have to be able to adapt to what's happening in the state.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? And so how can we better be much more resilient as a state as you're thinking about this as our new future? And so we talk about it a lot like that. Like how can we manage water in a better way? How can we make decisions that will ensure more resilience? How can we talk about heat island? How can we talk about flooding? And like in the new state flood plan, they just adopted it. Yay.
Yeah.
The first one. We're trying to build in nature-based solutions, as I talked about earlier. Again, it's not right now priority, but at least it's in the mix, right?
Yeah,
they included it in the they're talking about it. So I think that in the next iteration, it'll probably be get more points when you're talking about where the money's going to go for the state. So we're building that understanding and also just the awareness of the state, the people that live here. Plus, we've had a lot of people move to this state from other states where,
sure.
California and other places, which Texans don't want to admit that. But there are a lot of people coming to this state from other places and that have more of an affinity and appreciation for the effects of climate change. And they're seeing it and they want to do something about it. So we're going to see it in policy, mainly more than anything, is how do we address this through policy? And I think the younger generation is getting to some of our elected officials. So some of these younger elected officials that are coming in are talking about environmental issues in a way that is not so seen as so green. They're seeing it as they have to do it because their constituents are expecting it.
Yeah, it's their future, right?
So I think we're going to make the biggest shift as it relates to policy. And what's going to happen at the state and how they're going to start to address, because, as we're growing as a state, as I've said many times, and trying to put more money into conservation, we just passed $1 billion for parks. It was called the Centennial Parks Fund here in Texas. So they're putting $1 billion into developing new parks. Well, that's conservation.
Yeah.
You're going to go and buy properties and put it into parks, and that's going to be a way to advance conservation.
Nice.
We're trying to put more money into conservation easements and trying to show the public benefits of private conservation. Because a lot of times people think, oh, you're just giving money to a rich landowner. No. We give that conservation easement. It has water benefits. It has air benefits. It has, all the other benefits that come from private conservation. Sure, you may not be able to go walk on that property, but because it's not developed, it's providing all these other benefits.
Right. Well, I'd love to hear all this and be curious to see how the next session turns out with some of those discussions. And I know we're going a little bit long. Thank you so much for staying longer with me.
Of course.
So many fascinating things that you have to share. So do you want to be respectful of your time? So let's transition a little bit into now that you've shared all this great information, and listeners or audience members, I'm sure are inspired. They want to do something now. They're fired up
Yeah.
like me. What can they do? What's a call to action that you can have folks do now? Go to website, support Nature Conservancy, support their local folks. What's your call to action?
Yeah, of course. Well, the Nature Conservancy is all over. So please look up. I don't know if all of your listeners are exactly in where you are, or if they're all over the place. And I'm assuming your growing audience is all over the place. So I would encourage that folks go to find out if they have a Nature Conservancy in their particular state. They probably do, because they're in every state. But also, I mean, even though I love the Nature Conservancy, I think it's also important, find that place in your community, that local based nonprofit that is doing great work to clean up the river, or to think about pollinator habitat. That's a big deal. Or looking at nature, native plants. Go to become a master gardener. Just really understand and appreciate the role of nature, and how we all individually should be doing things in our own lives to make sure that we're protecting nature. Think about what you have in your yard. Do you have the most native plants? Is water an issue in your community? If so, make sure you're thinking about drought tolerant type planting. Every community is different, and every community has different environmental challenges. But I say, understand what that environmental challenge is in your community, and then do something about it. What can you do? Every individual, every person can make a difference. I also think, I always tell people, find out where your water comes from. Surprisingly, people turn the tap on and they think the water is there. They don't know if it's surface water. They don't know if it's groundwater. They don't know if it's a reservoir. They don't know anything about where their water comes from. Educate yourself. Find out where your water comes from. And then what are the threats to that water supply? And what do they need to do? And talk to understand what they're doing at your local city or state, or understand the policy issues. Because again, voices matter. And we're in an election year right now. I would encourage people to know what the platform is of those elected officials that are coming up for election. Understand where they stand on these issues. Ask the questions.
Yeah.
Because again, if we just sit back and think somebody else is worrying about that, then if you have hundreds of thousands of people that are saying somebody else is worrying about that, then no one's worrying about it.
Right.
But as I said earlier, the elected officials listen to what their constituents say is important. They will shift if their constituents say this is important, and especially if they're reasonable. I mean, you got to be reasonable in the arguments that you make about environmental issues. If you're going to be too far on either side, people tend to close down.
Yeah.
But learn the issues and understand where people are on both sides of those issues. And then you can make a reasonable argument, and you can go talk to your city council and make a difference in policy. Because I tell you, policy is going to be where the biggest changes occur. I mean, you could see through the Biden administration and the amount of money they've put in renewable development. Boom. I mean, there's a lot more renewable development. Policy matters.
Right.
And it does shift where the investments are being made. So I encourage people to just become aware, understand, educate themselves.
Love it. Well, I will put in the show notes the Nature Conservancy's main website, and I'll also put in the Nature Conservancy in Texas website so folks can support your organization, but certainly hope they listen to your advice as well, and get involved, get engaged, and wherever they are, wherever they happen to be listening or watching. So
it takes all of us.
It does. Every bit matters. Every little bit helps.
That's
Absolutely.
Right.
So I think that's been a consistent message that many of my guests, your guest number 12 on the show, and that kind of is a constant refrain that everybody keeps saying of everything matters. Get involved, do something. Don't sit on the sidelines. We can't have anybody sitting on the sidelines any longer. Everybody needs to be involved. We
can't afford it. And you as we think about, we look at what people are doing in Europe, for example, and we always think, okay, well, that's a different culture. They've done this for a very long time. Well, it had to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, right.
So it started somewhere. So let's bring some of that, sort of environmental ethic that it's just become part of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We
Well,
absolutely need to.
and as you talk about, it's balancing. That's another message that's pretty constant on the show is it's balancing that people, planet, and profit, that triple bottom line, and moving away from just the shareholder first or the profit first or profit only model that we've been so used to the last several decades, and moving to a balance. So it's not about doing away with profit or capitalism. It's just about evolving it, changing it, and looking at these other things, social issues and environmental issues in the context of economic issues as well. So that's what I hear you saying, and I am on board.
All right.
So
Yay.
last three questions, and then I'll let you get. So I do the same three questions to every guest. Talk about hard stuff on the show and climate change and problems and droughts and freezes. All this stuff can be hard, and environmental climate anxiety is a thing. There is people are worried about our future, so I always want to try to end on a hopeful note. And hope being kind of defined as you can envision a better future, and you have some agency. There's steps you can take to help this better vision come to be.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you three questions. Just give me your first gut reaction to the questions, kind of rapid fire, and talk to you a little bit about hope. So, Suzanne, what makes you hopeful? What's your vision for a better future? Could be for you personally, professionally, or for the world. What's your vision for a better future?
My vision for a better future is that people care about each other. I think kindness is important. And I think that if the more that people can see the kindness in others, then I think that they will want to take care of people and nature. So I'm hopeful about kindness.
So I think the whole episode has kind of covered this answer, but just to give you a chance to add to it, why is kindness your vision for a better future?
Because I think we need it. If we don't take care of each other, I think that everything else is not, it's just worthless, right? I mean, you see so many times how people are can be rude to each other or not take care of each other. And that can impact people's mental health. It impacts their approach to their daily lives. And oftentimes, when you see someone doing such a nice thing, it can change your day. It can change your outlook. It can really make you feel like it's all worth it. And of course, as you know, and we've talked many times in our personal lives, I'm a very spiritual person.
Yeah.
And I really think that faith is so important. And, Jesus' message to us is to be kind. And I think that's what we need to do. That is our purpose in life, is to just be kind to other people. And I think being kind to other people is also being kind to creation. Yeah. And we need to understand and appreciate what God has given us and what our role is while we're here.
Right on. So last question. So imagine we are in that future. It is here. It exists. It's happening. People are being kind and compassionate to each other, to nature, and that's the world we're living in, where kindness is the default that everybody functions with. Yes. How do you feel about that?
It would be beautiful. I mean, I think that the future would be, I think we would still be a very thriving and successful creation, and people would be kind to each other every day. And I think that the planet would be a better place because people would be understanding and have more, they would listen to other people's point of view, and they wouldn't react so much. They would be in more dialogue rather than immediately trying to figure out a position, So I think that if people were just kind to each other, they'd be more respectful to each other, and they would listen and learn from each other. And by doing that, I think we would bridge so many gaps, and it wouldn't be out for ourselves. We would be out for the common good of everyone, because if everyone succeeds, we all succeed. And I think kindness would be the foundation that would set us on that trajectory, that people would just have more care and compassion for individuals and the planet.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I'm going to do my little bit to try and make your future vision happen. That's something that I strive for every day, to try and live a life where I'm showing kindness and compassion to myself and to others, right? It's self-compassion's a thing too. So,
well, we have to all understand that everyone's coming to the day with whatever that happened to them that day, and it's
their lifetime, whatever they're bringing with their life
that's
baggage.
Whatever they're bringing with them, and you can't judge that, and you have to meet people and understand where they're coming from, because everyone has a tough life,
Yeah.
So.
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much. Thank you for going long too. This is it's been a great conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing in the state of Texas. Looking forward to when I get back there to seeing you in person and getting some good breakfast tacos or something again. I haven't had those for a while.
We have the best here.
You do. So
thank you for including me. I really do. I appreciate the time, and it's great seeing you again, and congratulations on your success. Truly.
Thanks, Suzanne. Likewise. We'll be in touch. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of another inspiring episode of Stories Sustain Us. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Suzanne Scott for sharing her incredible journey with us today. From her early days in San Antonio to her leadership role in revitalizing the San Antonio River and overseeing conservation efforts all across Texas, Suzanne's story is a testament to the power of leadership, resilience, and community. Suzanne's dedication to balancing the needs of people and nature, as well as her emphasis on kindness and compassion, offers a powerful blueprint for creating a better future for all. I want to thank her for her work, her insights, and for reminding us all that meaningful change begins with each of us. And because this is my show and I can say whatever I want to right now, I'm going to take this moment for a bit of personal privilege to publicly thank Suzanne for the positive impact that she's had on my life. People come and go in our lives, and sometimes it's barely noticeable that someone was there, and other times people who are in our life really can change the trajectory of our lives for the better. And in this case, Suzanne is one of those people for me. I didn't know it. I'm sure she didn't know it when she hired me in 2007 to go work for her, how big of an impact she was going to have on my life. The work I was able to do for her at the San Antonio River Authority was, for me personally, just an incredible opportunity. I literally was given an opportunity to travel around the world to talk about the extraordinary work that we were doing there on the San Antonio River under her leadership. I mean, who knew on day one that I would be flying across the globe talking about the San Antonio River? But beyond the amazing travel experiences and some of those things that I got to do working for her, I grew immensely professionally and personally under her mentorship. And too often we miss the chance to say thank you to people. I've thanked Suzanne a number of times in our one-on-one conversations over the years, but I wanted to take this public opportunity to say thank you. It's important. And I would encourage you to do the same. If there's someone who's made a difference in your life, make sure you say thank you to them. Life is short and you don't want to miss those opportunities and regret it later. So in this public forum, thank you, Suzanne Scott, for making my life better. And thank you for everything that you continue to do to make the lives of the residents of Texas better as well. So with that, I also want to take an opportunity here, as I often do each episode, to thank you, the audience, as well. I hope you found today's conversation as inspiring as I did. Remember, every small action contributes to a larger impact. So whether it's supporting local nonprofits, engaging with your community, or simply showing kindness to those around you, you truly have the power to make a difference. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate it. Please share it with your friends and family, and subscribe, rate, and review Stories Sustain Us on your favorite podcast platform. Your engagement really is important, so thank you for all your support. And as I mentioned at the beginning of today's show, I'm going to wait 2 weeks from today before releasing the next episode of Stories Sustain Us. That'll give everyone time to catch this entire episode if they break it up into shorter pieces, given it's kind of longer than I normally produce. So 2 weeks from now, on the next episode of Stories Sustain Us, my guest will share a deeply personal journey about living with HIV/AIDS. From the challenges due to societal stigma and discrimination in the early years of the AIDS pandemic to the advancements in medication that has significantly improved the quality of life for individuals living with HIV/AIDS. It's a truly powerful story that connects with sustainability as it relates to global access to healthcare and humanity's efforts to eliminate deadly diseases. There's clearly still a need for awareness and support for those affected by HIV/AIDS. So I hope you'll check out this episode and learn how you can help with the eradication of the HIV/AIDS pandemic by 2030, creating a more sustainable future for all. This moving episode will be available on September 17th, wherever you listen to podcasts and at storiessustainus.com. Please do check it out. Till next time, I'm Stephen Schauer. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Take care.